And in fact, when our troops realized that they were accidentally being burned, tried to save them. Tried to save these Korans. They couldn't. Generally speaking, that's what happened. What does our president do? Our president personally apologizes to Karzai. And what happened yesterday? 2 of our men are shot in the head and killed by one of the Afghan officers within the encampment because he was so upset that Korans were burned. And you've got our president apologizing to Karzai. It is outrageous. It is outrageous. We accidentally burn books. And our president bends over and apologizes. They shoot 2 of our men in the head, and I've yet to hear an apology. I've yet to hear my president stand up and say enough. What is going on? It is amazing to me how this president, in his heart, does not have this country's best interest. Put that on your tape, my friend. Amazes me. Hopefully this story will really see the light of day. And hopefully those facts will come out. Just think about it. Think about it. We realized accidentally, though they were using their Korans for bad purposes, we still didn't want to burn them. Found out they were accidentally being burned, and we tried to grab them before they were being burned, and they were accidentally burned. Everybody's up in arms over there. 2 of our boys are shot in the head. And our president apologizes to Karzai. Amazing. Second thing I want to bring up is this. Well, that's not big enough. We hear a lot today about the economy and the recovery and the jobs number, and we see this number, 8.3% unemployment, 8.5% unemployment. I think we're smart enough to know that that's really not the unemployment rate. I should make a copy of this. Next time I need to make copies. But the important graph, the important number I want to show people is that we have the lowest employment participation rate in this country in 40 years. This little chart graphs, this is the participation rate. And this gray area here is the recession. And really, since the recession and since Obama's stimulus, the participation rate, meaning the people who are actively out there working or trying to find work, has dropped off a table, continues to drop. When the unemployment rate went from 8.5 to 8.3% last month, the participation rate dropped even further. Americans generally have given up, most of are unemployed, in trying to find work. That's the real scary part of where our economy's at right now. Long-term unemployed. Highest it's been since the Great Depression. Our labor participation rate, meaning those people working or trying to find work, the lowest it's been in 30 years, and it's dropping like this every month. There isn't a Republican or a Democrat in Washington who does not want this country to rise up and grow again. None of us. All of us want that. And I know we're in a political season. We're in a presidential campaign. And this president, he's going to start talking about this recovery. We all want a recovery. But by every indicator, what he's done has made things worse. And we need a nominee. We're going to need a nominee to really talk about that. Look, I believe you could put Hugo Chavez in charge of this country. Whew. Eventually, the entrepreneurial gene, the get-up-and-go gene that's in all of us Americans is going to eventually turn around any economy and is going to eventually overcome the policies of any president, even Hugo Chavez. We are eventually going to overcome the restraints, the foot that this president has had on us. Eventually, we'll do it, because that's who we are. But he's made things terribly worse. If you think of all of us who've lost our homes, who have been out of work for the last 3 years, all Americans who are struggling, if you think of us as somebody just lying on our back, and I would argue the president's been sitting on us, eventually we're going to get up. But because he's been sitting on us, he's made it really tough to stand up. He came into office with a big pile of you-know-what on his desk. And his answer was, I'm going to sit on people. I'm going to borrow money. I'm going to regulate business. I'm going to tax people. I'm going to take this big healthcare weight and I'm going to throw it on business. Boom! Ronald Reagan came into office with a big mess of you-know-what on his desk. You know what Ronald Reagan said? I'm going to get out of their way. I'm going to get rid of regulations. I'm going to lower taxes on people. I'm going to let them grow out of this. Two completely different approaches, and there's no comparison in the recoveries. America jumped up when Ronald Reagan let us do our thing. Right now, we're crawling to try to get up because we have a president sitting on us. I'm going to stop there. Let's open this up to thoughts and questions on any topic, personal, political, or policy. And remember, respect everybody in the room. Yes, sir.
How you doing, Joe? And thank you very much for everything you're doing. One of the concerns that I have with the upcoming election is you say that eventually we're going to throw this pressure on us off, but yet when you look at statistics saying that up to 28% of the people who vote are not supposed to vote, and then another study came out that deaf people continue to vote in large numbers. And also I know people who are convinced that a driver's license is citizenship. Now, if you disperse with all the illegals coming into this country, and they believe they are citizens as soon as they cross the border, and this disperses in large numbers, it becomes a kind of a probability that certain states will not get the electoral votes because there are so many people voting who are not supposed to be voting. Is this beginning to take on any kind of concern on a national level? I know there's a movement here to maybe stop at least some dead people from voting, but when we call a meeting and try to convince them to vote Republican, no one shows up.
Well, there are two issues that you refer to. Talking about voter fraud, which is an issue, and talking about having to be a citizen to vote. Now, voter fraud's an issue. There needs to be some light put on it. It needs to be gone after. It needs to be investigated. I think most of us would be blown away by, maybe it's just because we're in lovable Cook County, very close to Chicago, we'd be blown away by the actual fraud numbers. And we as a people need to just be vigilant in investigating and going after it. The other issue is more important to me. Raise your hand if you don't think you should have to be a citizen to vote. Raise your hand if you don't think. If you know what, there are 14, 15 million illegal immigrants here right now. Raise your hand if you think they should be able to vote without having any proof of citizenship. Okay? That's the easiest question I'll ever ask. Raise your hand if you think you should have to display a photo ID to vote. Raise your hand. Roman, this just seems really obvious to me. Federal law says only U.S. citizens can vote in federal elections. We typically make this a state-by-state issue, but I don't know why we don't enforce that at the federal level. I don't know why we don't mandate at the federal level that you have to show proof of citizenship to vote.
Well, not even citizenship, you're not even allowed to ask for a photo ID.
Well,
because somehow that becomes racist.
no, and I'm forgetting what the term is. 30-some states now, you have to show proof of citizenship to get a driver's license, to get a state. Illinois is not one of them. So in many states, your driver's license now is your proof of citizenship. Again, the federal government has encouraged all states to get there. Many states are pushing back against it. Illinois is one of them. This, folks, needs to be an issue we all get wound up about. And it may need to be an issue where the federal government comes in and says something. If it's right there and it says to me, you got to be a citizen to vote, I want that enforced. How you do that? That'll be a toughie, but find a way to do it. But what do we get from this administration? We get South Carolina and other states passing photo ID laws, and what does Eric Holder do? Suing them. You get certain states like Arizona trying to defend their border, do what the federal government won't do. And what does this administration do? Sue them. Again, I will sound like a broken record. This is not a difficult election. Other thoughts, issues, questions, folks? Yes, ma'am.
I would like to go back to your opening statement and say that you said that there is so few jobs in the district. Would you please give us an example how you helped this district in the past, how many years?
I've been there a year.
A year, past year, and what are you working on right now in order to improve this?
Thank you. I'll start at the top. Probably one of the very first votes I made at the end of January or February last year was to repeal Obamacare. Now, and the Republicans in the House voted to repeal Obamacare. And again, it didn't go anywhere. Oh, let me finish. Okay, let me finish. Sometimes it takes us a while. And it was a nice symbolic vote, and we all said we'd vote to repeal Obamacare. Now, what does that have to do with jobs? Well, I'll tell you, and this isn't coming from me. If you and I held hands, and we talked to 100 businessmen and women in Palatine and Schaumburg and Elk Grove, okay? You and I, you could pick the 100 businesses. And I'm talking small businesses. And we asked them, why, and by the way, just so you know and I know, so we're on the same page, 70 to 80% of the jobs in America come from small businesses. Small businesses. So we go knock on the doors of small businesses, and we ask them, why are you not hiring anybody? I know what they'll tell us. They will tell us because you have put regulations after regulations after regulations on top of us. And they all talk about Obamacare. They all lead with Obamacare. They say to us, you people in Washington, pass this health care legislation. You didn't even know what was in the bill. You don't know how much it's going to cost. And yet the businessmen and women know it's going to impact them every single year, starting this year and next. So you're a small businessman in Palatine. You have 100 employees. You know this health care legislation is going to affect you. You don't know how much. So you know it. So how do you plan? How do you hire people when you don't know what those costs are going to be? So what they, and I'm not a businessman, what they tell me is they're just not hiring because they don't know how much those costs are going to be. And that's just one regulation. So what we have done, what have we done in the House? And you make a great point, because we've done a lousy job of explaining to the American people what we've done when it comes to jobs. We've really tried to undo a lot of what this president has done, because we believe a lot of what this president has done has hurt job creation. And we know it from talking to business people. You look at the EPA and all the new regulations that the EPA has put on top of business. What have we done about jobs? Well, I don't know. I voted 2-3 weeks ago, no, actually last week, to overrule the president and pass and implement the Keystone Pipeline, which would have created 20,000 jobs in a week. 20,000 jobs for welders and pipe fitters within a week. I don't know. I think that's a pretty good thing, and this president won't allow that. The difficulty right now is that the president and us, again, when it comes to jobs, got a much different viewpoint. So we do things in the House that we believe in, but we don't control the Senate, and we certainly don't control the White House. So what you're living with right now is not a lot's getting done, which doesn't bother me, because if you agree with me, and you may not, that everything this president's done has hurt, I don't want to do more things that he wants to do. Thoughts, issues, questions? Yes, sir.
The heavy and highway construction industry has for many years been strangling. I mean, just absolutely dying, slow death. We're facing 20 to 30%, forget about it.
Yeah.
The House finally started moving on a highway bill. Okay.
You're being generous.
Long overdue highway bill.
Yeah.
And let's also mention that, you know, they finally passed into law the FAA bill, which put people back to work after 23 extensions.
23 extensions.
23 extensions. And here we sit with 9 extensions on the highway bill, and I heard as recently as yesterday afternoon that it now looks like the highway bill is off the table, and we may have another 18-month extension. So there is a question here. What is it going to take to get a robust, well-funded, meaningful highway bill signed into law, and when is it going to happen?
I'm disappointed on this one, because I thought we had one a week or two ago. Our highways and most of our infrastructure is in dire need of update and maintenance. And you are correct. We have typically funded these projects 6 months, a year at a time. The people who work on these projects can't live like that. They need to plan 3 to 5 years out. And so what we had a couple weeks ago was the Senate had, I think, a 2-year extension. The House was contemplating a 5-year extension. We were arguing about the number, and we're arguing about other things. And I don't know how it's going to play out. Look, this isn't necessarily a jobs thing to me. It's something my government needs to do, and it will help put some people to work. But our federal government needs to play a role in keeping up our infrastructure.
1.2 million jobs, to be precise.
Well, the problem is, pardon me?
How many would it be in our district? Jobs.
How many of those?
Would be
Oh,
the-
I don't know that number. Probably a pretty,
Maybe you can.
yeah, probably a pretty decent number. Part of the problem is the highway bill, which originally came into play to fund and upkeep all of our highways, like everything government does. Over the years, lots of other goodies got put into that. So now, only about 30% of what we spend in our highway infrastructure bill really goes to highways. Mass transit's in there. Bike paths are in there. Flowers along the sides of the road. I mean, everything's been put into there over the years. So what the House has tried to do is try to get it back to where it's money designated for highways and infrastructure. and to be honest, got a lot of pushback from some people. Got a lot of pushback from people in Illinois, because rapid transit, upkeep of rapid transit has been put in there, and there are congressmen and women in Illinois who want that money not to go away. So we're fighting about that, we're fighting about how much money, and we're fighting about the length of the authorization. I'm with you in that it ought to be as long-term as possible. And it ought to be, as much as possible, money dedicated toward upkeep of our highways for as long as possible. And we're just not, we're not close to there yet. And I've read the same thing you read a day or two ago, because I was expecting to go back to Washington next week and vote on it. That may be in doubt.
Is it likely to happen after the election?
Well, again, you may get a situation where there's another temporary fix until after the election. I hope not. I know that I'm going to try as much as I can to push for a real meaningful long-term bill. Again, as much as possible, weeding the waste out of it, so it's money to go to highway projects and infrastructure projects. It's going to be a battle. You raise a really good question. Yes, sir.
Never met you before. Right. I'll answer the lady's question over there, okay? What bothers me a lot is the government can't create jobs.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
The government can't create jobs. What we have to do is put more money back into the pockets of everybody in District 8. The quickest way to put more money back in the pockets of District 8, the quickest way is to get that gasoline price down to about $2.50 a gallon, down to $2.25 a gallon. That's about $200 more a month in everybody's pocket to spend, so they can go to the restaurant, so they can go buy something at Walmart, so they can do something else. And it's not a government project. We're not taking money from the rich to give to the poor. We're just giving the money back to the people. So whatever you can do, if you can lower that gas prices, we'll give you more money and more jobs.
Let me ask you a quick question. Let's go around quickly. How do you create jobs? How are we going to create jobs? And by the way, everyone acknowledges, everyone does, even Democrats quietly understand this. I mean, heck, Tammy Duckworth's out there saying we need a robust recovery, so she understands it's not working. What Obama's done is not working. There are about 15% of Americans are really unemployed. How do we get this country working again? I'm going to start with you, my dear. How do we get this country working
What
again?
I think it's because it affected me personally. I worked for 27 years for United Airlines. I lived in this district all my life. After 4 years ago, I trained a person from India who took over my job due to the policies in Washington to say that other countries can come to here and take our jobs. Since 4 years, I have master's in computer science. The person who took over my job didn't have it. I have master's in mathematics from here. So when I was laid off 4 years ago, I am a teacher in community college, very lovely here. And I make fraction of the amount of money that I used to. I don't have insurance either. And due to the policies that other people can come here and take our jobs.
Let me stop. Raises an important point, an important issue. What do we do about that? Is that a problem?
Yes.
Okay, what do you want your government doing? What should your government do about that? Huh?
Quit giving jobs overseas, take a tax credit or something, keep corporations to keep business and employment here in the United States.
So to keep businesses from expanding overseas, what do you want your government doing? Do you want your government preventing companies from doing that?
No. Level the playing field.
How do you level the playing field?
By other countries that are charging import and export taxes, we need to do the same.
And that's
Okay.
And that's policy again.
So one possibility is you got countries like China who are cheating. Hit them over the head. Yes, my dear.
Don't we have the highest corporate tax rate in the
Yes, we
world
do.
as of April 1st? The president wants to lower it to about 28%. that would help the big companies like GE and General Motors. But he also wants to raise the individual tax bracket up from 35 to 41%. Doesn't that hurt small business people who report their business income on their individual tax returns?
Without getting down into the weeds, and again, this president is just political, what he proposed with the corporate tax rate a couple days ago will actually raise taxes on more businesses than it will lower, and it will create more loopholes than it will get rid of. Does that make sense? So it will raise the rate for especially any S Corp and any business that's not a corporation. Their rates will go up. It will lower some for corporations, but it actually adds loopholes. It's one more way that the president has just tried to politically grab an issue that we've been talking about since I've been there, lower our corporate tax rate. It's ridiculous that it's the highest in the world. But I mean really lower it. And I mean lower it for everybody. And I mean really get rid of loopholes.
But don't small businesses create about half the new jobs?
No, they create about 70 to 80% of new jobs.
Okay.
And this will make things worse for small businesses.
Right.
Yes. What about job creation, guys? We're not working. How do you get this country working again? You don't look like you've been around at all.
20% of the high-tech jobs left the USA from 2000 to 2010. That's equal to 187,000 jobs. We've got to create and bring the high-tech back to the United States.
How do we do that? How do we do that? How does your government do that? It's a great point. It's a problem. How do we do it?
Well, you do it by leadership.
Okay?
And I'm disappointed in leadership of the Republican Party. That I don't know what the Republican Party really stands for anymore on a whole. When Gingrich ran,
sounds like my line.
When Gingrich ran, he had 10 points, and that people understood those. And he kept pushing it, kept pushing it. We don't have, you tell me anybody that's got a plan that's simple that people can understand. Now, as far as creating jobs, first thing you do is you got to sell something. In order to make something, you got to sell something. So we need to train salesmen. And we don't train salesmen in college, in school, or anything else. We train lawyers, and they don't create jobs.
You train employees, not entrepreneurs.
Manufacturing. You want to create jobs in manufacturing? All right, now, you take, years ago, we used to have the luxury tax. And the manufacturing turns around and its cost is what it is. All right, now we added 10% onto the cost. That's the factory cost. All right, now that manufacturer then turns around and sells to the distributor. They out on 18%, like a refrigerator. All right, then they sell it to the retail purse, and that's 40% they add on. So you multiply that out. The government got 10%, but the customer paid all these taxes in there. We got to. There is no manufacturer doesn't pay taxes. We pay it in there, just like gasoline tax. Who's making the most money on the gasoline? It's the state. 11.5% sales tax, and when it goes up $1, we spend another 11.5 cents. And I'd like to see the gasoline on the pump, all the taxes posted on the pump, so that people know what it is. The government doesn't. They're the biggest profiteers of the gasoline.
I usually don't like people filibustering, but I'm not going to stop him. I'm not going to stop him. He makes too much sense. Stop! But hey, look, it's easy to say leadership. We need leadership. I'm not going to let you get away with that. What do you want your government doing? We're losing jobs overseas. Be specific with me. Give me government policy. Yes, sir.
You got to create policy to bring manufacturing back to the United States.
How?
Well, as I said before, you've got to level the playing field, not allow corporations.
So you're saying, penalize some of the other countries that are cheating.
Yes.
Hey, you may not agree. It's a potential solution. What else do you want your government doing? Yes, sir.
Make this a more attractive place to invest, so that companies from elsewhere in the world want to invest their money here because it's profitable to do so.
So make this a more business-friendly environment. That's a novel thought. Yes, sir.
reduce significantly the number of H-1B
Yes,
visas that
that's
are
right.
issued. That's why the red-haired lady in the front row lost her job, and eliminate Section 1706 of the Tax Reform Act of 1986.
Okay? Okay?
Both those things
Okay?
apply to technology people.
Make it more difficult for high-skilled foreign workers to come in and grab some of these jobs. A potential solution. Yes, sir.
Just to add to the lady's comments, is that we not only have Obama's policies holding us down, we also have a governor who is chasing out jobs left and right in this country. He thinks that by raising taxes improves things, but now he's saying that 5% is just the bottom. He wants to have a graduated state income tax,
Hey.
and it's just going to spend more and more money, less and less
Roman,
jobs,
you
and
are,
less money out here.
you and I got to take our act on the road because you're a perfect setup man.
Thank you.
I was going to segue to Tom Morrison. You mentioned making America more business friendly so that companies will want to do business here. Hold your hand. Put that down, my dear. Okay, I'm not going to come to you for a minute. You're going to get tired. You need look no further than Illinois. My office up in Fox Lake in Woodstock, we get calls every week from businesses that want to leave Illinois. Now, most can't, but they all want to. Now, why? Because it's such a good place to do business? I want to turn to State Rep Tom Morrison and let him jump in. Tom, to me, Illinois is a microcosm of the country. A lot of companies do want to leave Illinois. And like the country, we've made it difficult to do work here. Ladies and gentlemen, your State Rep, Tom Morrison.
Have a legislative solution for companies wanting to leave Illinois. I'm going to introduce a bill that says if you currently have a business here